If we look at Jeremy Siegel's latest interview, he seems worried about Federal Reserve's monetary policy. Let's take a look.
The probability of a recession is very high. Now, I'm not calling for a recession, but I'm saying that that is on the Fed's radar. So I'm looking at that. I think he's teeing up a cut. I'm just hoping that he'll cut fast enough that he won't go too slow on the way down, the way we know he went far too slow on the way up. So my concern is not that he's going to, cut too much, but he might cut too slowly. But the data will tell us what the judgment is.
Why is Jeremy Siegel so worried about Federal Reserve cutting interest rate too slow? It is because Federal Reserve has two mandates. One is for price stability. The second one is to achieve maximum employment. As we all know, the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.1% in June. It is getting very close to trigger the Psalm rule, which is a very accurate recession indicator. If we look at continued claim, which is the data that shows number of people who continue to receive assistance due to not being able to find a job, right now there is 1.85 million people taking continued unemployment claims, and this number is deteriorating because we can see recently there is a small uptick, and currently we're at the level last seen in November 2021. Let's look at the inflation. The June CPI was released on July 11th. We saw a cooler than expected headline CPI and core CPI, both on monthly basis and yearly basis. Year over year CPI is down to 2.97%, and the year over year core CPI is down to 3.27%. So we're getting closer and closer towards the 2% Federal Reserve long-term inflation target. In the CPI table, we can see that the service CPI continues to slow down. In May, it grows 0.2%, significantly lower than the 0.4 and 0.5% observed previously. In June, the growth is down to 0.1%. Within the service CPI, we can see that shelter slowed down significantly to 0.2% in June compared to 0.4% a month ago. And transportation services is actually see a decrease of 0.5% in May and June. So 2 months of negative growth or decrease in the transportation services sector. And to look at transportation services sector, we can look at the Delta Airline earnings report that was released on July 11th. So the reported number is less than the expected, and most importantly, the company is giving a weak outlook for the next earnings report. So it does seem like there is a decline in the demand for airline services, indicating that possible reduction of the consumer confidence, because traveling is mostly considered a discretionary spending. It's usually when people have money, they will spend more on it. If people are feeling less rich, they won't spend as much. But the CEO of Delta Airline explained the situation by saying excess supply has led to heavy discount. So he is saying there is a mismatch between the supply and demand, but he did not mention about a slowdown in the demand. But just by looking at a company's outlook, a weak outlook, it is definitely showing us that they are feeling a smaller demand for the air transportation. And if we look at the housing, right, the shelter inflation in the CPI, which is down here, shelter inflation is actually up 5.16% year over year, down from the 5.41% in May, and it's the lowest since May 2022. And on the other hand, the rent inflation index is up 5.07% year over year, down from 5.3% in May, and is also the lowest since April 2022. So in the report regarding to shelter, the most noticeable component change is for OER, or owner's equivalent rent. It's essentially a survey that asks homeowners if they are to rent out their primary residence, how much rent are they expected to collect. That's what OER is. So OER climbed 0.3% month over month. It's actually the lowest monthly increase in 3 years. And this chart shows you the apartment list national average year-over-year rent index, which show you the real picture of the American rent price versus the CPI owner's equivalent rent year-over-year percentage change. As we can see, the OER follows the same shape as the actual U.S. rent price index, but it has about 5 month lagging over here. So this is where a risk that a lot of economists are observing, because if the OER continue to follow what happened 5 months ago to the real rent market, it's going to continue to go down. And in the future, when OER continue to go down, it's going to be a lot of disinflation or deflationary pressure on the CPI, which means CPI will likely to be overshoot downwards below the 2% inflation target, and that's not good. With all these signs we're observing in the market, it's pretty obvious that the Federal Reserve needs to be start cutting the interest rate pretty quickly now. Now, if we look at the market expectation as of right now, the market is pricing in the 88% chance of a 25 basis point cut in September FOMC meeting, and a 55% probability of another cut in the November meeting, a 52% possibility of a third cut in the December meeting. And what is kind of deceiving is that in the beginning of this year, the market was super dovish. They were expecting 6 cuts throughout the year. And then we saw some inflation flaring up a little bit. We saw that market expectation actually went down to 1 cut for 2024. And now we're back to the dovish sentiment again. The market is expecting 3 cuts for the rest of the year. As we see more and more evidence are supporting this, I think you as a viewer should start to think about what the implication is, assuming that Federal Reserve are going to cut 3 times in the rest of 2024. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. See you.